Sharing your lunch with me today. I appreciate it. I wanted to take the opportunity to come and talk with you a little bit today about the new teacher evaluation system you've been hearing a little bit about. You've heard from us a little bit about last spring when we met as a secondary group. A lot of things have changed from that already. My goal here today is just to educate and to inform you a little bit and to teach you about the changes that are coming up in our evaluation system. As you'll see, they're quite extensive, and it's going to lead to quite a paradigm shift for us. So today, I'll tell you what I know, tell you what I've heard. Hopefully, you'll have some answers. Hopefully, you'll have some questions. Hopefully, I'll have some answers for you. But I'll tell you ahead of time, there are questions that don't have answers yet. It seems like on this process. So we'll see. So we'll go through. I know we only have about 20 minutes, and certainly there's no room to be late. So I hope I've timed the information correctly. It may end up earlier. I may have to really run at the end. So forgive me if my pacing seems a little off. Some things to know up front about the evaluation system. First off, please understand this is not a choice for us or any other district. This is a legislative action where we are required to implement a new evaluation model. Started clear back in House Bill 1 several years ago. Was really ramped up in House Bill 153 with the governor lately. So we don't have a choice. We do have some choice as far as how it looks in certain places, but the law states very clearly that it has to adhere to a framework. So we don't have complete local choice. This new system goes into place according to the law either next school year, 2013 or 2014, or at the conclusion of a district's negotiated agreement, whichever is later. And ours is later. Your negotiated agreement goes through 13, 14. So last year is our next year is the last year of your agreement. So we will implement this in the fall of 14. And another thing to know is that we have a district evaluation review committee, and we have been learning about it as information comes out for over a year now. We've been working on it, collaborating about it, trying to stay up on it. So it's not completely new to us. Some differences from our current system. One of the main differences is that every teacher is required to be evaluated every single year. The evaluation now is being defined by law. So the evaluation is defined as a minimum of 33 30-minute observations. It is an evaluation. In the past, we have not necessarily had to do 3. We have chosen sometimes to do 3, but sometimes we've chosen to do 2 observations. We no longer have that choice. So at a minimum of 3 observations, what it'll probably look like is 4 observations, 2 in each semester. So every teacher, multiply that by, say, 60 teachers here, that's 240 observations the principals have to do a year.
Okay. 3 observation forms and all that stuff that we do now, it takes about 2.5 hours to fill out for each one. We have to do that before each?
Yes.
So,
and I'll talk a little bit about that.
Exciting.
But there is that process. In addition to this process, you'll see later on that walkthroughs are no longer an option. Whereas we've been doing walkthroughs here as part of our daily interaction with you, the law now says that evaluations shall consist of teacher walkthroughs. So that'll be part of it as well. For teacher evaluation, as you've heard so much about, will include student academic growth now. And that is very, very much a change. That is not on any teacher evaluations in any way, shape, or form right now. And we'll learn more about that here as we go on. Another big change, and certainly some things are good, I think this is a good one, is now all evaluators must be credentialed in the Ohio teacher educating system, or evaluating system. They have to be credentialed. The evaluator does not have to be a district administrator. So, because they have so many observations and evaluations to do now, the state and the ODE seems to recognize that, and they have given districts the authority to contract out now. And they can contract out to any credentialed administrator to do an evaluation for you.
Willing.
Willing.
That's my new job.
Willing, yes, yes.
Could I get credentialed?
You have to do two things, the credentialing process, and I just went through it last week. It's the first one in our district to get to go through it. It's a 3-day process. I went through 3-day PD about the system and how it works, and now I have to pass a 3-hour test. So once I pass that 3-hour test, if I pass that 3-hour test, I'll be credentialed and I have an administrative license. So those are the two criteria.
So I could.
You could, if you had an administrative license.
Will you tell me what's on the test?
Probably not. They can also use faculty in your building who are under board contract and who have an administrative license. So if you go get your license and you're still working as a teacher, but you're credentialed as a principal or any other administrator, you pass this credentialing process, we could utilize you if you agreed to help with that. And that's obviously a very, very big change. So we'll see. One of the graphics ODE likes to use to explain this process, some of you have probably seen this, those who are in the committee with me have seen this a lot. It looks like this. You've got 2 parts of your total evaluation. 50% of it is based on teacher performance. Teacher performance, nothing to do with student growth per se. Those are based on the Ohio Standards for Educators. There are 7 of them. So as your evaluator looks at your walkthrough data, looks at your observation data, looks at your pre-conference data, your lesson plans, and all that stuff, that is going to encompass 50% of your total evaluation. The other 50% is going to come from the student growth measures. We'll talk about exactly what those are here in a little bit. Those 50%, each of those 50% lead into a rating. And that's another new thing for us. We don't rate you right now. We give you feedback, but we don't ever weigh in and say, we think you are. Well, now we have to. And your rating, a teacher's rating, has to be one of those 4. Okay? They're either ineffective, they're either developing, either proficient, or they're either accomplished. Another graphic to demonstrate this same concept, but you'll see this a lot as you start looking. Same thing, just a circle, 50-50, going into that. And then use that graphic a lot to see it holistically. So your teacher performance based on the 7 standards comes from this whole thing here. And I'll blow this up for you in the next screen. But the process to get to here is here. And the process to get to student growth is here. So in a bigger one that you can read, looks like this. So how are we going to get to your teacher performance? Even this part includes a little bit about student growth. The state, when this gets rolling, the state will attach to your name a rating of student growth from the previous year. Okay, so they might say, Joe, your students last year started off, they had expected growth. Or they had growth that was below or above. If it was expected or above, you have to start the evaluation process with the professional growth plan. And the growth plan is a plan that's teacher-led. That you develop your plan. It's designed to be a year-long plan that you can do some self-assessing in areas that you think you need to grow in. Okay? If your students are showing below expected growth, then you have to start with an improvement plan. An improvement plan is not teacher-led. An improvement plan is administrator-led or evaluator-led. So the administrator chooses what's on your improvement plan. The administrator monitors. This is not self-monitored like this is. This here is administrator evaluator monitor. And then you start with that, and then you go into the sort of formative assessment stage, I guess, for lack of a better word. We do our walkthroughs, we do our observations, we have our pre and post conferences with you. We put all that data together into a mid-year conference with you. We go through the rubric that some of you may have gotten, and we are to give you 2 things, or your administrators are to give you 2 things at this time. Of all the things we observe, of all the things we watch, we're to discuss it all with you. We're to give you one area of refinement, one area you need to get better on, in our opinion, and one area of reinforcement. So at this stage, we don't weigh in with a rating. Okay? We just say, hey, there's an area I think you could grow on. Maybe your classroom management could stand to get a little better. Maybe your formative assessment isn't as much as we'd like to see. Here's an area you're going really, really good at. Keep it up. Then we go into the next stage. We do that all again. Do the whole process again. And then we get to your final review and your final conference. And that's when we take the rubric and we assign based on the rubric, which is pretty specific and really pretty easy to narrow down on where a teacher falls when you get into that rubric. And we say the teacher performance on the standards falls into one of these four: accomplished, proficient, developing, or ineffective. And that gives us the first 50%. And then we get that other 50%. We get the other 50% from the student growth. Student growth has to kind of be linear. If we have value added available, which basically means if you're an English teacher or you're a math teacher, and there's value added data about your students from the previous year, we have to use that. We don't have a choice. But what we do have a choice on this, like this whole box is representing the 50%. What they're saying is you can use value added anywhere. This is a district decision. You can use value added as either the whole 50%, or you can use only 10% of it, in which case the other 40 could be in a LEA's lead educational agency, the district. And the other 40% could be a district common assessment. And that's what our evaluation committee has to kind of work on this year. I think we have to decide as a district what we want to do here. We want to just say, hey, all 50% of your student achievement data is going to come from value added. We want to say 25-25. We want to say 10-40. What do we want to do? Obviously, this would mean a lot of time developing common standards for ourselves, doing a lot of vertical alignment, and coming up with a lot of common assessments. Because you know what? A lot is riding on this now. It's where we're at, it's not so significant for us. I feel like if we don't get this right, and we lean too much on this, and we don't have the infrastructure to do it right, it really puts you all in a bad position. So it's something to be taken seriously. If there's no teacher value added, so any subject besides math or reading, the next step you have to ask is, are there vendor assessment data available? What they mean by that is, do you give a vendor test that you can use to show student growth? And how that process works is the state takes applications from vendors to be recognized as a vendor accepted test. And if they accept them, they have a list for us. These tests have been accepted, and you can use these tests to look at student growth for this process. Right now, the only one on there that we use is the Explore test in 8th grade. It's the only one that we use here. What I don't understand about that is you can't really use Explore to measure student growth because we only give it one time a year. So I don't know if they were going to suggest we would do it twice a year if we want to use that. It's not really jiving with me how the Explore would be used to measure student growth. That's right now the only one that we would even have to consider.
Is that skills test, Explore?
Explore is everything with science. So I doubt we'll end up here either. Right now the SRI, I thought the SRI would be one that we would have to do, but the SRI has not been approved by them right now. There's only, they say there's going to be up to 200 on right now. There's only about 25 or so posted. So we'll see how much work gets done before this. There's no vendor test. We go down to just our own LEA test, our own district test. Every single class we teach has to have vendors. Every class. Jamie Brown's Spanish exploration class we started this year. We have vendor growth. Where were they when they came in? Where were they when they left? PE, art, health. Every teacher, every class. So you can imagine the work involved in this. And you can imagine the importance of being that would be that other 50%. And here's how we would come up with the teacher's final. So we said, okay, I did my observation work, did my 4 observations or 3 observations, did all my walkthroughs and whatnot, followed the rubric, and I came up with proficient. Okay, they're proficient, they're good, they're right where they wanted to be. So you start here, and then you say, okay, student growth measure, I have no say in this. The administrator has no say in this whatsoever. This is state, there's a website we'll talk about that manages this. Your name will be attached with this, and we just follow this across. The thing to notice about this is if your students meet expected growth, you students do what they're supposed to do, you cannot get an accomplished. Okay? You have to have students go above growth to get them. So the state, as you'll see, they are very verbal about saying accomplished is A+++. Okay? We feel like we have a problem, and I'm paraphrasing, and evaluators are too quick to just say everybody's fine. This is straight from the governors. You can hear the governor saying this. And you know what? We have very few people here, they can say. So it's going to be tight. And they say, that's okay, just have a paradigm shift, let your teachers know, the goal of the accomplished sort of rubric is like this small. The proficient is this big, and that's where you really should feel good about being as a teacher. So they're encouraging us to change the teacher's school thought, and don't let anybody feel discouraged at a proficient, that you should walk out of a conference feeling 7 feet tall. You've got a proficient. I want the terminology scare you away and make you feel like it. So that's how we're being guided. Quick summaries of what an effective teacher is. A teacher fails to demonstrate just minimum competency. So they don't even demonstrate the minimum competency. They don't have any improvement over time. They're pretty much the same later as they were earlier. And basically, it requires immediate intervention on an evaluator's part. They can't let it go on. That would be an ineffective final rating. A developing rating would be the teacher does develop minimal or demonstrate minimum competency, but there's still some incompetency in some of the 7 standards. They do show progress. They are getting better, but they do require support and guidance. Again, proficient. You're constantly meeting the expectations. You're consistently meeting them, and you demonstrate most of the competencies they're looking for. A quote from the state is, "This is the rigorous. The proficient, they say, is rigorous. This is good. Expected performance level for most experienced teachers." Accomplished. More than in the classroom. They want the teacher to be a leader, and they want the teacher to model in the classroom, the school, and the whole district. And they want to exceed expectations. They want it to be somebody who strives to improve. And they want it to be somebody who contributes to the school or the district through the development of their colleagues. You can see going by this, it is kind of a tight window. Providing evidence for that would be tight. Accomplished. How does it all come together? There's a system that we'll be required to use right now. Evaluators don't have to use any state system. We do it. We file it in your personnel file, and it's it is what it is. The states have no longer. Administrator or evaluator, you have to go on to this system, electronic teacher principal evaluation system. You'll see teachers' names with their student achievement data that exceeding growth, meeting growth, or not. You'll see that there. You'll punch in your information for what you came up with for the teacher performance, and it will calculate. It will tell you what this teacher's final rating is. Will also do is it will provide data to the ODE regarding the number of teachers that we had in our school and in our district receiving each rating. What we're hearing is if we see too many of one, we're going to be chatting with you as an evaluator. Okay, so we're not monitoring this stuff now. We're not. I mean, good or bad, however you want to look at it. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's bad, but we're just not. And that's shifting. We are going to be monitored. The other side of this, and I know you've heard a little bit about this. They are now, but everybody's watching this, and we fully expect requests from replies to a plain dealer, and we fully expect them to publish teachers' names. We hate that. We don't like it. We don't think it's fair.
There's somebody requesting it already.
I think it's going to happen. So, yeah. Some things for you to know is that having seen all this, it's something you can rest assured we're taking very, very seriously. We, in anticipation of these being published in the paper, we know we have to get it right. So we will have been trained on this for 3 years before we started. Our evaluators will all get trained on this year, so they have next year to get used to it. We don't want to not know what we're doing and cause you guys any harm or anxiety. So we're aware of that. We're doing it. It's just a 20-minute quick summary. Questions I can try to answer for you? Observations?
Yeah, I think it saddens me, but the thing that worries me is, I think in some of our buildings we already have an issue with morale and climate and that sort of thing. So who is going to be doing the scheduling? Because I want as many high kids as I can get in my class. I can see it breeding that sort of competitiveness. Is there a component that's worked in so that kind of stuff is distributed equally and fairly?
Jan, that question comes up almost at every training, and the answer I get from the trainers is almost always the same. And I don't know that you buy it or not, but the answer that they would give is, remember, we're not talking about performance, we're talking about growth.
Okay.
So theoretically, high-level kids have to show growth just like a low-level kid would. So if that high-level group of kids that you had, they're green, yellow, or red, it has nothing to do with whether they're proficient or not. Did they grow from where they were last year, a year's worth of growth? And actually, when it gets going, that'll get turned into 3 years worth of growth. And that goes into the calculation. So there is a little cushion, knowing that it's not all what you get. There is some residual from the year before. To me, that makes some sense,
Did you say that for a teacher to be accomplished, their students also had to be at a certain level, but that's not based on their actual...
Right, the student growth has to be at a level.
Okay,
student
growth.
performance not necessarily. So you can get the low every year, but if you grow them a year, or actually more than a year, that's above, you grow more than 1 year's growth. I think some would argue, I can grow those low kids. If you have any questions or want me to come in and talk more or anything, please ask. And make sure you sign in the sign sheets, get credit.
Guys, I'm going to get away